Okay, so part two has to do with racial equalities, and it's called Two Centuries of Struggle. So to keep in mind that African Americans have been fighting for equality for a very long time. Remember, the first enslaved Africans were brought here in the 1600s, pretty soon after the founding of Jamestown. And then, of course, the Civil Wars in 1861 to 1865. And then here we are in 2021. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. All right, the real meaning of equality. So, I've got some conceptions here of equality. The real meaning of equality is both elusive and divisive. Many Americans favor equality in the abstract, but the concrete struggle for equal rights has been our nation's most bitter battle. The rallying cry for groups demanding more equality has been civil rights, which are policies that extend basic rights to groups historically subject to discrimination. Philosophically, the struggle for equality involves defining the term. Constitutionally, it involves interpreting laws. Politically, it often involves power. Okay, so I think that's really important. In the little introduction, I had a definition for civil rights. Please know that. Please write that down. And then this is a really important part. I'm going to just repeat it. So, philosophically, the struggle for equality involves defining the term. Constitutionally, it involves interpreting the laws. And politically, it often involves power. So, I think that's a really important part. All right, American society does not emphasize equal results or equal rewards. A belief in equal rights has often led to a belief in equality of opportunity. Today's debates over inequality in America center on racial discrimination, gender discrimination, and discrimination based on factors such as age, disability, and sexual preference. The delegates to the Constitutional Convention came up with a plan for government rather than guarantees of individual rights, and the word equality does not even appear in the original Constitution. The only place in which the idea of equality clearly appears in the Constitution is in the 14th Amendment, which prohibits the states from denying, quote, equal protection of the laws to any person. So I've got that bolded right there. I didn't quote it, but it's bolded. It was not until the mid 20th century that the 14th Amendment was used to assure rights for disadvantaged groups. But the Equal Protection Clause gradually became the vehicle for more expansive constitutional interpretations. Okay, so here is a little tip. It's not an absolute, but when we are dealing with civil rights civil rights Supreme Court cases, 14th Amendment is going to play a key role, and also the idea of the equal protection. Okay, so the equal protection clause. So maybe write that down, make a note of that, because we're going to have some court cases that have to do with this. All right, the court has developed 3 levels of judicial scrutiny, or otherwise called classifications. So most of these classifications that are reasonable, are constitutional. So when we talk about classifications that are reasonable, the kind of definition for that meaning, I think it's pretty similar, but they are things that bear a rational relationship to some legitimate governmental purpose. Okay, so there's that word legitimate in there. So when we have something that is reasonable, it makes sense, it's backed up, it's supported. Okay, racial and ethnic classifications are inherently suspect, meaning that they are presumed to be invalid and are upheld only if they serve a compelling public interest that cannot be accomplished in some other way. Okay, so we've got a broad group of classifications that are reasonable. Then we've got racial and ethnic classifications that are called inherently suspect. So it's kind of like, those are going to be a little bit fishy. And then the third group, we have classifications based on gender, and they fall somewhere between reasonable and inherently suspect. So gender classifications must bear a substantial relationship to an important legislative purpose. So what we mean by that is cases that are heard on a gender discrimination kind of gender discrimination case would be something that it's going to have to create an important legislative purpose. Okay, it's going to have kind of a bigger impact across the nation. So just to kind of keep that in mind, that they aren't saying that all gender classifications are suspect. They're kind of in the middle. Okay, in the middle. So while your book is also arguing that racial and ethnic ones are inherently suspect. Okay, so that's a lot to think about, just even in those couple little pages. So if you're listening to this and watching this before you read, definitely look for those examples in your chapter in those pages, and to be kind of thinking about why we have the classifications those ways, the ways that they do, and what the impact is. And then also to think about, will it stay the same? Are things getting better on the racial and ethnic situation, and harder on the gender discrimination front? Or is it kind of the status quo? Just some things to think about as you're reading, to try to make some connections to today and what's all going on in the world. All right. Thanks, guys.